This is part 2 of Colorado, a Headwaters State. This is excerpted by OWOW, the One World, One Water Center, from the May 21st broadcast of Environment America's Conservation Conversations. If you're not familiar with Colorado, it's a dry state. Here in Denver, we get about 13 inches of precipitation. And, with people on the call, Bridget and Kate, I know you're from states that relatively get a lot more water. So 19 states are relying on this very dry state to give them their water through thick and thin. So looking at the 19 states that do receive water from Colorado, there are 4 major watersheds. Little rivers will connect with larger rivers and merge and flow from one to the other. The one I'm going to focus on is the Colorado River. It is our namesake river, of course, and it's the most important river for our state and downstream in that the most people rely on it. 40 million people, not only in 7 US states, but in Mexico as well. So the most interesting thing about the Colorado River is that it is overallocated. The interstate compact that I referenced earlier, it's an old one. It was agreed to almost 100 years ago, 1922. And it hasn't changed much. We forgot Mexico when we originally agreed to who would get what downstream. So in the 40s, Mexico was brought on board as an official participant in the Colorado River Compact. But a few things looking back that just have changed. First of all, it was divided in the wettest year on record. 1922, there were a lot of acre feet coming through the Colorado River. So we also, or they, the architects of this plan, decided to do a minimum allocation in acre feet instead of a percentage, which has caused problems because very rarely, if ever, is anyone really going to see their full allocation in acre feet. At that time, there were 20 million acre feet flowing, and the average now is about 15 million. But it's not unusual to see it less than that. And then you've got climate change exacerbating an already dry situation in the Southwest, and you've got population growth. Southwest has seen a huge boom. Nobody thought Phoenix would grow as much as it would. Nobody thought Las Vegas would grow as much as it would. So that brings us to perhaps the poster child for a need to do something. That is Lake Mead. So again, if I were in a room physically with people, I would ask people, have you seen this image before? It's affectionately referred to as the bathtub rings. And it's not unique to Lake Mead, but I think it's perhaps one of the more jarring examples of how water levels have declined. And it's a rare year that Lake Mead is filled to capacity. These bathtub rings evidence a few things. They evidence overallocation, climate change, and population growth. Essentially more straws trying to suck from a finite resource. Las Vegas, speaking of straws, is a really interesting example. Of the 7 states, Nevada gets the least amount of water from the Colorado River. And with that water, it flies in the face of reason. Las Vegas is super, super, super efficient. I mean, you think of the Bellagio and you think of all of their water features and you think, yes, that's not to say that they use their water in very big, dramatic ways, but it's one of the most efficiently run systems in the United States. First of all, they realize that their driver economically is tourism. So they'll allow certain uses of water, like at the Bellagio, but no one else can have a fountain in their home, or there are very strict restrictions on what you can do as a resident or as a business. The Southern Nevada Water Authority, the local water provider, recycles every drop and sends it back to Lake Mead to count as credit toward extracting more water. They have a turf replacement program where they'll pay you to remove your turf grass, which is a water-intensive crop. So they have a lot of super, super innovative water-efficient approaches that you might not be aware of. One interesting thing, speaking of straws and how dire the bathtub ring situation is, Las Vegas had 2 straws or pipes that pulled water from Lake Mead and delivered it to the city. One of them is completely above water now. It is almost never submerged. So that's, offline. Another one is in danger of being offline. So to the tune of billions of dollars, just a few years ago, they completed the 3rd and final straw from Lake Mead to pull water to the municipality. So you've got the 7 states and you've got all of the challenges that we're facing. And even though it's an antiquated agreement, the Colorado River Compact, it seems to work. There are flare-ups, and you've probably heard about some disagreement with Arizona recently. And, there have been, and there will continue to be Supreme Court cases that have to figure out, who gets which water. But, over almost a century, this compact has held up pretty well. Now, the story of Mexico is what I'd love to wrap up my presentation with, and then I'll open it up to questions. As I said earlier, Mexico was a kind of a late addition to this compact, but deservedly so. Mexico and the state of Sonora and Baja California rely on river water for agriculture and also some municipal use. So over the last few years, I think objectively, you might say U.S.-Mexico relations have not been their best. And the reason I like sharing this story is because it bucks the trend of tense relations between the United States and Mexico. In 2011 and 12, there was a negotiation overseen by the International Boundary and Water Commission between the United States and Mexico. And it created something that is worth celebrating on many levels, especially on an environmental level. It was called Minute 319, and Minute is just the section in a long government document that references what was called the pulse flow. And this was a release of many, many, many acre feet of water from Lake Mead through Morelos Dam, which you see in the picture here. This was a U.S.-Mexico delegation, including myself, that I'll tell you a little bit more about. But this is at Morelos Dam, which is where the Colorado River is dammed at the border to Mexico, between Arizona, Yuma, Arizona, and Mexico. And there was a pulse flow. They opened the floodgates, literally, and for environmental and social benefit, just let the water run in. It dramatically impacted the Delta, the river Delta, and the town of San Luis Rio, Colorado, which in its name, San Luis Rio, Colorado, it has the name of the Colorado River in it, yet since the 50s, the river had not flown through. So this was the first time, if you can imagine, generations of people having grown up and never having seen the namesake of their city. So socially, it was a huge benefit. Environmentally, it brought back plants and restored habitats, even if it was not permanent. But it showed that what a difference that cooperation can make. So much so that in 2017, another minute to this binational agreement was signed, and that, back to the bathtub rings, is aimed at addressing that issue. The agreement says that Mexico can hold its water in Lake Mead until it needs it. So not only does that, enable it to control its access to its water allocation more, but it maintains higher levels of water in Lake Mead. And it this minute also spells out some cooperation and investment and technical guidance that the U.S. will give to the city of San Luis Rio, Colorado, and to Mexico generally to improve efficiency. So OWOW, One World, One Water Center, plugged into this initiative a few years ago in two ways. One of which was Denver Botanic Gardens was enlisted to design a master plan for water efficient botanic gardens in San Luis Rio, Colorado. And so that is in the works and hopefully should come to fruition in the next year or two. But it's a beautification project, but it's also a community education and just a societal and environmental benefit to the city of San Luis Rio, Colorado. And then the other element was that OWOW would consult and advise in other beautification and greenbelt projects in San Luis Rio, Colorado. One interesting element to the Botanic Gardens that hopefully will come to fruition there and to the beautification projects, they would take water that would have otherwise come from the Colorado River, but has been reused and treated by the municipal water authority there with technological investment from the US government and US states. And that would reduce the need for freshwater sources in the Colorado River to be used. And so it plugs into that ability of Mexico to leave more water in Lake Mead. So I just like this story. It's a feel-good story, not to say it's gone perfectly. There are political snafus and some of the projects have been delayed because of new administrations on both sides of the border. But it gives us hope that there is collaboration internationally on water issues. And that really brings us back to OWOW and what the purpose of the program is. It's this acknowledgement that we can't rely on one group of people, you know, the biologists or the hydrologists to solve our water problems. It has to be the political scientists, the social scientists, the teachers, the journalists, the farmers. So anyway, that's what OWOW is about.